Come on, let's merry-go, merry-go, merry-go-round. Do, 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 merry-go, merry-go, merry-go-round. Do, 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 me and you can go merry-go-round. It's very easy, just go up and down. Come on, let's merry-go, merry-go, merry-go-round. Do, 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 merry-go, merry-go, merry-go-round.
Thanks, Lloyd. Great to be back here on television again. Wasn't it Andy Warhol who once said, everybody will be famous for 15 minutes? Actually, that's not what he said at all. What he actually said was, I'd like a minicab in 15 minutes. They always get the bleeding message wrong, don't they? Anyway, this is my first TV series since 1995, and obviously a great deal has changed. I'm 6 months older for a start. I've got loads of new material now, loads of brand new material, so here we go. Kajagoogoo get into their Sinclair C5 and head off to East Berlin. Well, it's really difficult thinking up new material, you know. So what have I been doing in between series? Well, obviously I like to spend a lot of time staring off into the middle distance, rocking backwards and forwards and humming. And the BBC have been awfully good to me. They got me a job damaging dogs for Animal Hospital. But I have done other stuff. The valley below me looks peaceful enough now, but in the 16th century it was rife with brigands and highwaymen. The only way the pilgrims could be sure of reaching Santiago, 200 miles to the east, was by cannon. Of course, when I say sure of reaching, most of them, in fact, were splattered like the ripe tomatoes that litter the... I do a lot of voiceovers for radio ads, but what I like is when there's an ad on the radio for some financial product, like loans or mortgages or something, and they say really quickly, right at the end of the ad, your pets may be disemboweled if you do not keep up payments. Hey, what the? You may be hung from a gibbet and your liver pecked out by ravens if you do not keep up payments. Hey, what the? But recently, I actually appeared in my first ad.
Le Shuttle. It's only caught fire once.
But perhaps my favourite piece of work was my sitcom for BBC One, Castaway Colin, in which I played the only character. And every episode ended with me saying, oh, so it wasn't somebody else who stole my shoes. I must have stuffed them up that tree while I staggered around in my malnourished delirium. One of the tough things about being a comedian is that you have to do a lot of travelling. But before I set out on a journey, I always sprinkle a little salt and pepper and just a hint of tarragon onto me bollocks, because I'm a well-seasoned traveller. In this show, I pretend to be like a real hard case, a real psycho. But it's all an illusion, it's a lie. Mind you, when I was at school, I did know some real nutcases, some real hard cases, you know. You have to be really careful what you complain about, because real psychos, if they like you, they like to do you favours, you know. They're always coming up to you in the school playground going, that problem you had with the school hamster, it's being sorted, yeah. There's a new fairy kebab down the chip shop. Oh, you might complain about the prices in the local sweet shop. You'll be going past the next morning and you'll find the owner crucified to his own front door with half a pound of toffee brittle rammed up his arse. And I still really regret complaining to Stokesy, the bully of 4C, about President Kennedy's foreign policy in Vietnam. As I said before, I'm not really this hard case in a tight suit. So let's have a look at the real me inside my real house. Hi, I'm Alexei Sayle. And this is my house in the country. I mean, it's in the country. Come on, don't be shy. I like to read left-wing magazines because they delude me into thinking that I live in a world that cares. About 5 years ago, I saw an advert asking if I'd like to adopt a whale. So I sent off my £20, and in return, I got an adoption certificate, a photo of my new whale, Minky, and a warm glow of smugness. Guaranteed to last for 18 months! Then, a few months later, I got a letter in very, very large writing, which said, "Dear Dad, how's it going, man? Sorry I haven't written. Thank you for that 20 quid. However, I have now run out of krill and plankton and could do with another 2 grand to tide me over. Tar ever so much, Minky." Then, a couple of months later, another letter. "Dear Dad, thanks very much for the extra £2,000. I have invested it wisely. I now have a career in show business. The CD of my whale song, which contains some cover versions but is mostly original material, is at number 31 in the Mood Music charts. Love as ever, your son, Minky." Things seemed to be going well, but then the next letter brought a surprise. "You bastard," it said. "You bastard. You're not my real dad. You think you own me, but you don't. You're not my dad. You're not my real dad. I hate you. I hate you. P.S. I am washed up on an Alaskan beach. Please come and roll me back into the sea." And after I pushed him back into the water, he looked up at me with his big eyes and said, "Dad, I want to go home." And he's still here. He plays his whale music really loud. He eats all the krill in my fridge. And he will insist upon watching MTV's Summer Beach Grind. But at my age, it's nice to have the company. We should know by now that we mess with nature at our peril. Grey squirrels were introduced into Britain, cane toads were introduced into Australia, both times with disastrous results for the native ecosystems. But what is perhaps less well known is the catastrophe that befell Milton Keynes shortly after it was built. Milton Keynes was built in the 60s as part of a scheme to create exciting and prosperous new towns. Whilst the new city had clean roads, new homes and plenty of street lighting, it had no culture. There was no organic tradition in the arts or music to entertain the new young citizens. The council hit on a radical solution. Trad jazz musicians were introduced in an effort to kickstart the local music scene. At first, everything seemed to go to plan. Unfortunately, the jazz musicians had no natural enemies. In the predator-free zone of the new town, they started to breed like wildfire. Before long, they were taking over, and Milton Keynes was plunged into trad jazz hell.
You should be ashamed of yourself. This playground's for kids, not for full-grown men.
Hello? All I want is a first-class stamp. A bloody first-class stamp, that's all I'm asking for. That's it. A first-class stamp.
Another radical solution was called for. A wild predator was set loose on the streets of Milton Keynes, the flamenco guitar player. the council couldn't foresee was that the two species might interbreed, causing the townsfolk even more inhuman misery. The government had no choice but to send in an elite special forces squad. Eventually, some semblance of normality was restored, and the musicians were selectively reintroduced into the wild. So, the next time you wonder why new towns are so bleeding boring, remember, nature intended them to be that way. When you're a comedian, you have to come up with new material all the time, which is fair enough, really. But the same is also true if you're an academic. Historians, for example, have to come up all the time with new and ever more balmy theories about things that happened in the past. Like recently, a revisionist book was published which asserted that life in the trenches during the First World War was actually quite a jolly affair. What are they going to come up with next? That the bubonic plague was great because everybody got a day off work? Being in a battle, of course, is an extremely unpleasant experience. Post-traumatic stress syndrome is now known to be extremely prevalent amongst ex-servicemen. In 1940s and 1950s Britain, the country must have been full of ex-servicemen who were deeply damaged by their experiences during World War II, which will go some way to explaining some of the things that happened then. Like Bill and Ben the Flower Pot Men, for example. Imagine the scene, right? You've got this children's TV producer who's been nearly tortured to death by the Japanese, and he's pitching ideas to a head of department who was torpedoed 4 times in the South Atlantic and had to spend 15 days adrift in a lifeboat with the rotting corpse of his best friend. And the producer goes, "Okay, these two guys, right, and they're made entirely out of flower pots, okay? And they live behind a weed, and they only come out when the gardener goes for his lunch, all right? And the dialogue goes, kerflobbalob, a lobbalob, a wobba-wob, kerflobbalob." And the head of department's going, "I love it, I absolutely love it. Go away and make me 400 episodes. Or you've got, like, one guy pitching to another guy, and, like, the first guy's, like, head is composed mainly as shrapnel. And, like, the other guy, he was tail-end Charlie in a Lancaster bomber which caught fire, and he's, like, 70% burns. And the first guy's going, "Okay, I'm thinking singing pigs, I'm thinking contemporary hits, I'm thinking high, squeaky voices." And the second guy goes, "Makes absolute sense to me." So, there you have it. You know, if a few modern TV producers were shot in the head, it might really improve things.